right, everybody. Thank you for joining us this Friday. Welcome to all of our faces in this community. We're so excited today to welcome Tammy Triolo, and I just want to tell you a little bit about her before we get started. Tammy is founder of PCQ Consulting and author of The Culture Revolution. PCQ is a company founded to make workplaces better for all employees. Tammy has over 15 years in the healthcare industry. She's worked in many areas from compliance, credentialing, management, and culture development. It is her love for building better company cultures that led her to start her own company with her co-founder, Caroline Eller. What makes her and her company different is she is not afraid of having the hard conversations needed to build a better company culture. And if any of you joined us last time Tammy joined us for a talk, you know she's up, or you follow her on LinkedIn, you know she is up for some good conversation. So we are here for that today. Something I love hearing about from Tammy all the time, learning and discussing with her. So I hope you're ready and willing to learn, whether you're here live with us or on Team Replay. We'll drop that YouTube link later. But today, we're going to talk to Tammy and hear from her on the Black experience, from her own lived experiences and that of being a Black woman from the Caribbean, her insights on how we craft the stories we live by. I can't wait for this discussion to open up. So Tammy, what else do you want to share about yourself or this before we hop on in?
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank all of you for joining me here today. I'm so ready to have this discussion because I was saying to Tiffany and Suman backstage, when I wrote the post on LinkedIn, I got some pushback, but I understand why I got that pushback. And so I think this is a needed discussion. I've been having a whole lot of discussion around anti-Blackness. And so this kind of fits into that discussion I've already been having. So I'm really excited to be here today. Like I said, I hope to not offend anybody, but sometimes it happens.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I don't think that you will offend anyone here. So we are looking forward. So tell us, can you start off by just telling us about your experience? What prompted this post? What was kind of on your mind when you were thinking to post it? And what has been the experience that led you to want to share this on LinkedIn?
So I think what prompted that post was I was having a conversation with somebody who was a potential client. And as we were having the conversation, she started to make distinctions about Blackness. And I had been in so many of those conversations before when I first got to America, this distinction about who's Black, who's not Black, how Black people are, what Black people do. And I found the conversation interesting, not triggering, but interesting. And she kept probing me on what my upbringing was, how did I fit into America? And she was trying to separate me out from Black Americans. And when I first came to this country, I didn't know that that was a thing, right? So I came from a country where I am the majority. So in my country, Black is not racialized. We're not racialized, though. We are just Bahamians, right? And so we are the majority. So I didn't understand the racial dynamic that was happening here in America when I first got here. So as she was doing that to me, I had a moment of, this has happened to me before in the workplace. And it's happened to me with managers where they were trying to do this conquer and divide between Blackness, right? And so if you can get Black people who aren't from America to view Black people who are from America as less than you, then you can somehow control the new Black people coming in, right? And so the way white supremacy works is it will use anybody in its toolbox, right? And it doesn't really matter what the color of your skin is. It's the purpose. It's the end. White supremacy is a system. It's not white people. It's not one white thing. It's the whole system. And so the system is always recruiting new people and new bodies. And the color of the person's skin really doesn't matter. You're being recruited into white supremacy to upholding it. And so as we were having this conversation, and I said to her, I said, what would be the difference if I was from America or if I wasn't? And she said, well, you guys are just different. Like you value different things. And I was like, oh, okay, well, tell me about my Black experience and tell me what I value. So she was like, well, you guys value education and you value family. And I was just like, yeah, we do, but we come from broken homes just like anybody else. Like broken families is not unique to any one person or any one group. We all have that. We have it in the Caribbean. There's broken homes in Africa. In fact, in the Caribbean, our broken homes are we've socialized broken homes. So in the Caribbean, your husband can have a girlfriend and babies outside of the marriage, and everybody knows, and we pretend we don't know, and you meet your sisters and your brothers later in life, but everybody knows what's happening. So there is dysfunction in every group. And so when I was pushing back on her about why do you need to make the distinction between my Blackness and somebody who's from America, what is the need for that distinction? And again, the need for that distinction is white supremacy is always recruiting. It's always recruiting. And unfortunately, in this country, we do have racial hierarchy. Now, people pretend that we don't, but we really do have racial hierarchy. And at the bottom of that racial hierarchy always lies Black Americans. Now, when some Black people come into this country, some Black people fall for that, right? Especially if you come from a Black country where you aren't racialized, you don't really understand what's happening. But I think once you start to figure out what's going on here, then you have a choice. You have a choice to reject that and realize that no matter where you go in this country, you are still going to be phenotypically Black. You are still going to be treated like you're Black, and people are still going to conduct with you like you are Black. So I was just like, I'm not going to be paying, I'm not buying into this racial hierarchy where Black Americans are at the bottom and everybody else is at top, because the truth is, especially for Black immigrants, and this is a conversation I have with people within my own community, we wouldn't even be in this country but for Black Americans. We wouldn't even have this opportunity but for Black Americans. And that's every other minority group. The Civil Rights Act didn't just help Black Americans, it helped Asians, it helped Indians, it helped Black Caribbean people, it helped African people. Everybody is sitting on the back of Black Americans. And so I think unless you read and you understand history and actually learn the history of Blackness in this country, it's easy to fall into, well, yes, we are different. Yes, we are socialized different. Yes, we do have different values. Yes, we do have different. It's easy to fall into that if you don't understand how you got here and whose sacrifice made it possible for you to be here. So if you don't understand that, you fall into this trap of separating Blackness, and I'm just not here for that.
Ooh, take a breath first and foremost. Oh my gosh, thank you. That is such a dynamic. And we were y'all having some conversation before we kicked off and let everybody in the room around this and what it means in different settings and different social circles. I don't know if Suman has anything she wants to add or ask, or if anyone else does, but I gotta take a breath here and just soak that in.
I am literally, I've actually avoided the chat because I was so focused on what you were saying. And so first I want to welcome everyone that I haven't had a chance to say welcome to in here, because Tammy is on fire. You really are. And so I'm curious and I'm sure you're going to talk about this a little bit or now, but when you had this woman or this potential client come and chat with you about this, the thought process in your mind, and I know you are always on fire and you're not afraid to say it, but for some of those of us who might not want to have that strong confrontation, or what are some of the tips on how you can bring this conversation to the forefront and continue the conversation, right? I will have these conversations. I am not as strong personality as you are, and I dream and wish that one day I will be. But I'm curious, how can maybe anyone here have those conversations?
Okay, so here's the thing. Like I was saying, white supremacy is always about recruiting, right? And I don't have any tips for telling people not to have a voice and stand up against that. Because when people don't stand up against it, this is why we still have it. This is why it continues. Now, you may not have the same voice that I have, right? You may not feel as confident as to say to somebody, like, what you're saying is absolute nonsense, right? But what you can say, you can push back. You can say, I want to push back on what you're saying to me. That's all you have to say to somebody. Can I push back on what you're saying to me? Because what you're saying to me, or you can say, what I'm hearing, right? Or what I'm hearing you say is that I am somehow better than these people. Is that what you're saying? And I always make people own what they're saying to me. I'm going to make you own the conversation you're having with me. You're just not going to have conversations with me. And then I'm going to get off that call and go, oh gosh, I wish I would have said that. It's easy to simply ask, restate what it is you're hearing from them. This is what I'm hearing you say. Is that what you're saying? Now they're going to do one or two things. They're either going to backtrack and lie and say, that's not what I'm saying, or they're going to have to clarify what they're saying and say, that's exactly what I'm saying. And then you get to decide whether or not you want to continue engaging with this person, or if this is the client you want to work with. Because I'm telling you, it's going to be hard for you, because when people do that, when I say they're recruiting, they're going to expect you to be the Black person to show up in the room the way they want you to show up. So if you don't say, no, I'm not that Black, listen, I'm not that Black person. Now, I'm sure you can find a few of them. I just don't happen to be her. And until you say that to somebody, then they're always going to expect you to come. It's like inviting people to the room, inviting people to the table, and then saying, we've invited you to the table, you Black person, you gay person, you Jewish person, you whatever person, but now we want you to conform to the table. We're happy you're here, but we don't really want anything that makes you different. We're going to invite you to this table, but now you have to conform. And until you start pushing back, you're going to always be in positions where you're conforming to whatever narrative the person has set for you. And in this instance, it was white supremacy, because to put me above, to lift me up as somehow a better Black in itself is problematic. And if anybody is going to go into a room and somebody's going to lift you up as the better Asian, the better Indian, the better woman, the better gay person, the better Jewish person, do you understand what they're asking you to live up to that you possibly can't? And so I will never set myself up to go in spaces where somebody's having an expectation of me that's not really me. I'm just never going to do that. So if you're not me, you can simply say, what I hear you saying is, and I just want to be clear. And 9 times out of 10, when people realize they're saying some messed up stuff, they will change the conversation. Now, but the good news is, you know who the person is. You know the conversations you're having. So you can leave that conversation and not have had like a big confrontation in the way that I did, but you can leave that conversation and saying, okay, this is not a job I want to be in. This is not somebody I want to associate with. This is not a client I want to take on. And you would have left that conversation. They probably wouldn't have felt like it was confrontational. It probably wasn't confrontational for you, but you have the information you need to make a different decision about who you want to work with.
Absolutely. We got fire emojis popping up all over the place today. It is
Somebody,
Holly is feeling the spirit. Sean, I want to hear what you would love to contribute to what Tammy's saying or your question. Thank you for your boldness.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and welcome, Tammy, to our group. It's wonderful to have you here.
thank you.
Locked in to your every word. It's awesome. There is, and I say it, a caste system here. My fellow participants here hear me say it all the time in this chat, that has to be recognized. Also, something that you're not accustomed to, having come from a place where the majority is Black, is that we were raised from the time we were little, from the time we were toddlers, to make white people feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Feel more comfortable with the way you speak. I need you to feel more comfortable with my very presence. I need you to feel more comfortable with me sitting at the table with you. Mm-hmm. So we acquiesce. We run to hold the door. We jump out of the way. We lower ourselves. Mm-hmm. So to crawl out of that mentality it's a trek that some people can't do. And it took me a decade to do. It took me, especially a woman of color in sales, I had to code switch my whole career. And the last decade of my life, I just let it go. This is who I am. This is how I speak. This is where my people are from. This is how I grew up. I don't hide it. And it has been difficult sometimes to do, because deep rooted in my being is to make white people feel comfortable with me.
Yeah.
And I have constantly tried to share with people that mirror is a perfect thing, because sometimes you use it when somebody insults you. What did you say? And when someone has to repeat an insult, they feeling it now. So when you use that tactic that Tammy is describing, hold up a mirror to it. Hold up a mirror and say, I just want to test my understanding. Are you saying that that you're more comfortable with me because I'm not a Black youngster?
Yeah, that you have to do that. And if people, to her point, when you hold the mirror up, you make people own what it is they're saying. I have been fortunate. I have been fortunate. And I want to talk about when I first got to the US. So I moved to the United States at the age of 14. And I went to a predominantly Black school. And when I got into that school, I had such a hard time making friends with Black Americans. And I didn't understand it then, but I completely get it now. I had a hard time making friends with Black Americans because I didn't understand the culture. White people to me weren't anything but tourists, so they didn't hold any importance to me. So the white kids that were in the school with me, they just reminded me of people I saw coming to the island as tourists. But I couldn't make this connection with Black Americans. I just couldn't. And then in high school, I had 3 friends. And all 3 of those friends were from the Caribbean. They were other Caribbean kids. And so I found these 3 people and I kind of latched on because I couldn't make this connection. Like I had no cultural reference for what Blackness was in America. I only knew how to be Black in my Caribbean body. I only knew how to be Black and Caribbean. I didn't know how to be Black in America. And I remember this one kid saying to me, I think we were like in the 11th grade. He said to me, he was like, oh, great. Another one of y'all to come take our jobs. Now, at the time, I didn't even know what that meant, because I was like, sir, if you think I'm working, please. Me? No, I'm not. I'm in high school. I have an allowance. Excuse you. There's no working that Tammy is doing, sir. So you can have all the part-time jobs you need because I won't be taking them. So I will not be applying. I will not be interviewing. Those jobs are yours. So I didn't get that. I didn't understand what that meant. And once I became an adult and I started working and I started interviewing, I got what he was saying. And what he was saying is, when you show up in spaces with white people, simply because you're not Black American, they're going to prefer you. Now, again, in high school, I wouldn't have known that. I had no way of knowing that, right? I was 14 years old with an allowance, didn't have to work, wasn't even thinking about working. I was only coming to the US to do school. I wasn't even supposed to be living here. I wasn't supposed to stay here. And so for me, I never code switch because I had no reference to what code switching is. Tiffany will tell you, the way I talk now is the way I talk in all my videos. It's the way I talk in the workplace. Anybody who knows me, this is my voice. I don't switch it and I don't change it. So I don't even know this. I didn't know then the struggle of this code switching that Black people had to do. Then when I got into the workplace and I started noticing how I was treated in interviews, when people would say, well, where are you from? Simply because I spoke differently. So I would get, where are you from? And I would say, well, I'm from the Bahamas. And immediately, the minute I said that, it was like people would perk up. Like the interview would pick up, everybody would get excited, and then we would have all these discussions. And I started noticing when I got into the C-suite level that when there was hiring or decisions to be made, if the person was Black American, I started to notice. I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I could, it was clear. It was clear. And I was saying to Tiffany, I don't walk into a room with the weight of my race because I've never had to. And I think Black people who come to this country who don't know that feeling need to sit in empathy with Black Americans in that feeling, because we've never had to walk into a room with the weight of our race. So even though I live in America, I never walk into any room with the weight of my race because I grew up in a country where I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to think about how I was speaking. I didn't have to think about what I looked like. I didn't have to think about what my hair was doing. I didn't have to think about if summertime came along and I was 3 shades darker, what did that mean? I didn't have to think about any of these things. So when I got to America, I didn't have that weighing on me, or I didn't bring that in the room with me. But if you're a Black American, like Sean was saying, you learn very early, make white people comfortable. Now, my Black ass, excuse me, my job is to make you as uncomfortable as you can be, especially if you're a white person who decides that my Blackness and Tiffany's Blackness and Holly's Blackness and Sean's Blackness is the problem for you. I want to make you incredibly uncomfortable. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I want to make you so uncomfortable, you leave the room. Not me, not Holly, not Sean, not Tiffany. You leave the room. So I don't know what that feels like, even being in America as long as I have, because I didn't grow up with that. I don't have that. And so I have such empathy, really, for Black Americans, because like Sean was saying, you get this programming early. You get it young. You get it young. You're told to move out of white people's way. Don't be too loud. What are you doing with your hair? Don't wear that makeup. You know, I talk a lot about even bodies, Black bodies, the way Black bodies are policed in the workplace. Listen, I'm built like my ancestors. You're going to see some tits, okay? Because that's what I got. You're going to see some booty, because that's what I got. And so I saw how my body was being policed in the workplace by other people who say, well, I mean, it's cute, but it's showing a whole lot. And I was thinking, I'm covered from head to toe. What you're seeing is my shape. I can't do anything about that. And so all of these little things that white people tried to put on me, I just rejected. And I rejected because I come from a country that had me grounded in my Blackness. Black Americans don't have that. It's a wild experience for Black Americans, isn't it? Because you're in a country with people who enslaved you, oppressed you, Jim Crowed you, and now people are saying, now we're going to put you in schools with these people, and you're going to work alongside these people, and then you have to figure out how to get along with them. Like, that's a wild experience if you think about that. It's like the person that enslaved you and your family, raped them, killed them, lynched them, murdered them. Then we're going to create laws that separates you from them. And we're going to constantly be telling you how you're not as good as them, how you are the bottom ring in society. You aren't good. You're Black. Something's wrong with you. And then we're going to pretend like there's so much progress without any real healing, because there hasn't been any real healing in America. No reparations, no real healing. Without any healing, we're now going to drop you in neighborhoods with these people, and we're going to say, live as one. We're going to drop you in schools and say, go live together. We're going to drop you in the workplace and say, go live together. And on top of doing that, these are going to be the same people that tell you your experience that you're having isn't real, that you keep bringing up race. You're the one that's race baiting, and you're the one that's race trading. Like, this is what's happening to Black people in America. And now that I'm in America as a Black person, although I'm still connected to my Caribbean roots, the things that happen to Black people in America still impacts me. It still impacts me. And so I just think I'm never going to let anybody separate my Blackness out from other Black people. I'm just not going to let you do that. So if you come into a space with me and you decide that you like me because I'm a more palatable Black for you, I'm going to tell you you should probably sit with me a little while longer, because I'm probably going to become unpalatable real quick. So I just don't play those games. I don't play those games with white people, brown people, Asian people, because like we were saying at the top of the before we got on live, Tiffany, anti-Blackness is in every group, and especially immigrants that come to this country. If you're an immigrant that come to this country, you get the messaging very early. You want to be accepted, hate the Black people. You want to go far, hate the Black people, and every group gets that. Black immigrant people get that. Indian immigrant people get that. Asian immigrant people get that. Middle Eastern immigrant people, every immigrant, Jewish, every immigrant gets that. You want to get ahead in America, the way you do that is you hate Black people. And so because I know that, I know this Blackness, just because it's from the Caribbean, it doesn't shield me from that level of hate. It doesn't shield me from that level of violence. So just because somebody may be treating you slightly better, don't mean you're getting any better treatment. And so I understand that, but I understand that there's a lot of Black people who come into this country through immigration that don't get that. And this is what I want to say. There has to be empathy both ways, right? So being in America, as long as I have great empathy for Black Americans because I was fortunate not to get that programming from a very young age, that something was wrong with me because I was Black. But the empathy that Black Americans have to have for Black immigrants is they're coming from a racialized country where they are the center. So they're experiencing Blackness in America differently too. They're having to adjust to what Blackness for them means here. So I see a lot of discourse that happens online where, there's Black Americans against the Africans and against the Caribbean. And it's just that we're having a different experience. And listen, if you've been in America long enough, if you're Black Caribbean, Black African, eventually you start to pay attention, you get what's up, right? But if you're a Black American, all you see is these Black people coming in and somehow getting pushed to the top of the front. But a lot of times, those Black people aren't even really aware, because like I said, when I first got here, I wasn't even aware of what was happening, like what this separation was doing. I had no idea. I just thought, oh, okay, well, I was friendly and I was personable and I was nice. And so that's all I thought it was. And until people started saying to me, but no, you're different. No, not really. I mean, we have cultures that are different, but there's things that unite all Black people. There's a thread that unites us all. And it's an invisible thread, but it unites us all. Black people, I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're Black from the Caribbean, Black in America, Black from Africa, Black from Europe. There's a thread that unites all Black people together. There's movements that we all understand. There's conversations that we are privy to. We understand it. So I think when we're having this conversation about who's Black and who's not Black, particularly for Caribbean people, if you've ever even experienced a Caribbean person, and I'm sure if you're Black in America, you probably have, where it seems like they think they're better, sometimes people buy into that, right? Because that's a survival mechanism as well, right? Whiteness requires you to survive it. You don't thrive in it. You survive whiteness, and all of us survive whiteness. All of us are surviving it. There's no thriving in whiteness. So sometimes people do that to survive it. And so because I understand that, I can have different and more nuanced conversation about race, maybe than most people can, because for me, nothing is Black and white. We're all living in the gray. And I think until people understand that we're living in the gray, it's not as Black and white as we'd like it to be, then I think you can have some empathy for both Black immigrants coming in and also Black Americans, because although we're having a different experience, we're still very much Black. And don't let anybody tell you you're not Black. That's not a badge. And these are conversations I'm having with people within my space, my Caribbean space, because I have Caribbean people that will say, but we're different than them, girl. Now, we're different than them. And I'm like, no, we're not different. We're not different. We're not different than them. We're Black. We're Black. If a cop pulls you over, you Black. If somebody wants to reject your job application because of your name, you're Black. Okay. If you want to get passed for that promotion, you're Black. You being from Haiti or Jamaica or Trinidad or all these other, it ain't gonna matter, not one iota. You're Black. And so this is the conversation I'm having within my community, in the Caribbean community, with my Black friends and colleagues that still hold that view that we are somehow different. And different is okay, but different doesn't mean better. We are different. We eat different foods. We have different music. We have a different cultural language. So yes, we are different, but that doesn't equal better. And I need Black people to start thinking about that just because we are different doesn't make me a better Black than it makes Tiffany, right? In the same way that I'm a dark-skinned Black woman. So I'm going to have a different experience than a light-skinned Black woman. I'm going to have a different experience in America than my daughter's going to have. My daughter's a mixed race, high yellow, light bright woman. She's going to have a different experience in America than I have had. And I've seen it already with my daughter. I was talking on the last podcast I was on, and I was saying how I noticed, and my daughter hadn't noticed this, but I noticed when my daughter was in the mall and she would be with friends, and her friends were my complexion, and Tiffany's complexion, but she, she's the lightest skinned one. And her friends would ask the sales associate a question. They would never answer her friends. They would answer my daughter. They would speak to her. Now, these are teenagers. They're 14 and 15, so they're not paying attention to what's happening, right? I'm paying attention to it. Every store I would take these girls into, if any of the dark skin or the brown skin girls asked a question to the sales associate, they always answered my daughter. They would turn and speak to her. And after like the third time of it happening, I pulled her aside. I said, Sky, come here. I said, when you go into the next store, if your girlfriend asks for something, if they ask to see your clothes or changing room, and they go to answer you, you redirect them and tell them you didn't ask the question, answer your friend. But she wasn't even aware. Again, these are teenagers. She wasn't paying attention to it. But that's what I'm saying. Being dark-skinned and being light-skinned, you're just going to have a different experience in America. And so I'm paying attention to how Blackness shows up, how people treat Blackness, how different various shades of Blackness get treated. So I know that Blackness in America is still Black, and that separating that people try to do is about divide and conquer. And I just won't be a part of being the divide and conquer. Like, you're just not going to get me to do it. And like I said, some people fall for that. Some Black people fall for that. But I do ask that in these discussions between Black Americans and Black Caribbean and Black African, that on both sides, that there's empathy employed for both groups, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think once people get into America and they've lived here long enough, they understand what the trick is. They understand what's happening, and then you can navigate it differently, but you have to be aware. And white people do this all the time. And I want to say some white people aren't aware that they're doing it for the reasons I think that they're doing it. And some are very aware that they're doing it. And I think white people always like different. Like they're just attracted to whatever is different, whatever is new. So if you show up in a space with them and you are somehow different, sometimes it's just out of pure curiosity, they want to know what's different about you. And sometimes it is about setting you up against Black Americans to make yourself different and to make yourself better. And I think being able to distinguish the difference is going to help, but you have to know when that's happening. And it happens a lot. And I just happen to know when it's happening. And I'm the Black person that will always push back against that narrative, always.
Wow, so many golden nuggets here. I'm trying to catch them with the bag. Thank you, Tammy. I love this, like, different is not, that doesn't equal better. So yeah. How did we even arrive there, right? But it's the whole structure that was built to pit us against each other. I really appreciate you sharing that. Avinash, you have your hand up, and Laura, I see your question too. So I do want to come back around to that as well.
Wow, Tammy, listening to you, I thought that you just like covered so much breadth of what I want to go and listen to what you just said, because I was like, oh, that idea. Oh, wait. So thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. A lot of things resonated, especially making white people, especially those in power, feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And you are the good, the N-word, as long as you don't speak up and you just conform.
Yeah.
And the moment you feel the moment you start speaking up, then you become a problem. That you just like ganging up on. And I think a lot of people in power are aware of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They say, we are not ganging up on you, but you have now 3 supervisors to report to. Yeah. And so forth. But so a lot resonated with me, and yeah, I feel like about your point about immigrants hating on Black people.
Yeah.
So that to get ahead.
Yep.
To not identify, like, oh, I'm different. Look how high I can jump.
Yeah.
That. So when I came to this country 14 years ago, I was totally unaware of the history. I came here for grad school and totally started as a blank slate. But then the unawareness got to me because I'm still impacted by, being not white.
Yeah.
So the more unaware or uneducated I was, the more confusing everything was.
Yeah.
Something only made sense when I saw this through what the Black leaders were talking about. And then suddenly it was like, oh,
yeah,
I see that. I see that. I see that here and here and here. And the more educated one becomes, you realize, oh, my brothers are not white people. My brothers and sisters are the Black people.
Yeah.
And I can't push or segregate or say I'm not, I am part of, I know which team I am on.
Yeah. And that's important, right? It's so important to understand where you are. And I think as an immigrant, I'm so glad you're saying this, because a lot of immigrants who aren't Black don't often admit to this and come to this awareness and understanding that the system is to make sure that all of us hate Blackness, and you get ahead if you don't like Black people. And so it's purposeful. Like, listen, I say to people all the time, a white person not being racist in America is a miracle. It is an absolute miracle of biblical proportions. And I'm going to tell you why. And I don't say this to, crap on white people. Well, the reason why I say that is because the investment made to make sure you are racist is huge. The country has invested to make sure you're racist. So for you to come out not racist, miracle. First investment, we're not going to teach you real history. That's the first investment. We're not going to teach you the real history. We're not going to tell you what really happened. All the explorers, all the colonels, all the generals, everybody that made it good for the country all look like you. You're the reason why everything is great in America. That's the first investment. Second investment is television. Tell a lie with your vision. So what they're going to do is everybody looks like you. All the families that are intact, they look like you. All the great neighborhoods, you live in them. All of the wonderful things, you did them. The investment made to make sure you as a white person is racist is huge. So like I said, to not be racist would be a miracle. Then we're going to do advertising. And who we're going to advertise? Everybody looks like you. All of the beautiful women, you. All of the handsome men, you. All of the doctors, you. All of the lawyers, you. All of the historians, you. Do you understand the investment to make you very aware that you are the center and you are the best, and everybody should be striving to be you? So the investment to make sure that you're racist, and definitely invested. Then we're going to build corporations, right? We're going to create tax laws and loopholes, and we're going to make sure that nobody else gets in but you. So everybody at the top of the corporation, you. All the CEOs, you. All of the prominent politicians, you. Everything is you. All the good in America, it all looks like you. It all came from you. It's all because of you. All of it is you. So the investment to make sure that you see race and to be by extension racist. Now, when I say racist, I'm not talking about you running out and calling people the N-word and screaming at them, but it's that racial bias that you have that inherently puts you in a position that everybody must measure to you. So if we don't speak like you, we don't speak well. If we don't eat like you, what are y'all eating? If we don't dress like you, what do you have on? If our hair doesn't look like yours, why does it have to look like that? So you, by extension, measure everybody to yourself and whiteness. All white people do that. You do that. You measure everything and everybody to your own whiteness. So to come out of this kind of programming and investment into whiteness and then say to me, a Black person, of course I'm not racist. Please understand, I know that you're lying, but I forgive you for the lie, because I know that's probably a lie that you're not ready to reconcile within yourself. You're not ready to come to terms with, yes, I've been programmed to see myself as the beauty standard, the smart standard, the standard for everything good and right. I see it in me. I don't see it in them. And so when one of them, whether they're brown, whether they're Black, whether they're whatever, when one of them makes it, I go, see, it's not that hard. They just really don't want to do it. They don't want to be better. It's really, look, Oprah did it. God, we're sick of Oprah. I mean, we love Oprah, but good Lord, like, stop with the Oprah stuff. But this is why when I say that when you come to America, whether you come to America as a Black immigrant, Indian immigrant, an Asian immigrant, doesn't matter what immigrant you come to, you're always going to be conditioned to be anti-Black, because the programming to make people anti-Black, it is set. The ground for that has been set, right? And so then what it will do is lift up, you know, some Black person that made it, some Black person that's successful, some Black person, to tell you that the reason why the rest of us aren't making it is because of ourself. It's not systems in place, right? Starting from the boardroom on down. No, it can't be the systems. It's just they don't want it. They don't want it. But every single person is in America, and even Black people, because we talk about anti-Blackness, not just in white people and in brown people. Anti-Blackness lives within Black people. And the way it shows up for Black people is we do respectability politics. She don't speak the way we speak. She don't look the way we look. Why she got to dress like that? So then we start policing one another as Black people, because that's how much America has invested in making sure everybody is anti-Black. Everybody is anti-Black. I want you to understand that the lowest group is Black. And then for the Black people and brown people who come here, they make sure we know the lowest group is Black American. So we're going to put you one step above them. We're going to put white as the top. Coming in second place is Asian, and pick your Asian, whether you're Asian from India or Asian from an Asian country. Asian comes in underneath there. Then we're going to drop some Hispanics in there. And then we got the Middle Eastern in there. And then we got the Blacks and the Caribbeans from Africa. And at the bottom is Black American. That is the caste system we live in America. And I hope when you leave this conversation, you recognize that caste system and recognize how people are talking to you about Black people and what your thoughts are about Black people. Because the first thing you have to do is you have to answer this question honestly. Now, you don't have to answer it here with me because y'all ain't paying me for that. But I want you to answer this question honestly. What do I believe about Black people? And don't write in your journal some flowery bullshit. I want you to write, what do I believe about Black people? And then I want you to write down what you believe about Black people. And then I want you to ask yourself this: where did I get that from? Where did I get that from? What do I believe? And where do I get that from? And I promise you, if you start with that one question, it's going to start to unravel a lot of things for you. A lot of things for you. Because you can have Black friends. We've all had a few. You can have Black, listen, you can be married to somebody Black. You can have half Black children and still hold anti-Blackness in your body. Proximity to Blackness doesn't erase anti-Blackness from you. So the question I always ask people, I want you to answer this question honestly. Honestly, what do I really believe about Black people, and where did I get it from?
Wow, Tammy. I think I love that. That's where we sit with ourselves, right? And where we sit with what it is that we come face to face with, what isn't, because that, when you're uncomfortable, that's how we're learning. That's how we grow. That's how we become better for other people who are oppressed and marginalized. And we start to ask those questions. Why did I feel that way? Why did I think this? And even taking that a step further to say, this is what I did, and owning up to some of those maybe nasty behaviors or things that you just didn't know about yourself. I think, Laura asked a question around, I think you answered a lot of how do we change that as Black Americans, as Black folks? How does, she's also wondering how do white people continue to change it? And I think we talked about a lot of that. And what we just talked about is one good way. How, what do I think? And how did I get there?
How did I get there? And I think that's the first question all people have to start with, because I got to tell you, I have had to work on my own anti-Blackness, right? Because the programming around Blackness not being good, it didn't escape me. It didn't escape me, right? I've been in America longer than I've been in the Bahamas. So even I got that programming in the most subtle of ways, right? And so then I had to sit with myself and go, well, what do you really think about Black people? Not what you think about you. What do you think about Black people? The people who look like you, but aren't you? What do you think about those people? What do you think about those people? And so I had to ask myself the exact same question. And so this is why I don't do this hierarchy in Blackness anymore. I don't do, well, that's the prestigious Black and that's the ghetto Black and that's the this Black. Well, Black is just Black. Black is just Black. And it's Black people. We have to allow Black people to have the same experiences that we allow white people to have. And what do I mean by that? White people get to be elite, middle class, poor, but they still get to be white, and nobody questions their morality in that. Like, poor white people aren't more criminals. Nobody questions the core of who they are based on where they sit economically. We only do that with Black people. So if you're a Black person, but you are upper or elite, we decide, well, she has morals and values and she has all the things. And then we look at poor Black people as if they're people that we need to be afraid of, people that we need to watch, people that we can't associate with. We need to have that same level of openness that we have around whiteness is the same we need to have around Blackness. And Black people have to deconstruct that for themselves as well. I know a lot of classes Black people. I always say, Black people became the most educated and simultaneously became the most classes all in the same breath. Because that's our anti-Blackness showing up for us. So that's how we wield anti-Blackness against each other. We do it through class, whereas white people and everybody other group do it through race. But anti-Blackness sits in all of us. And so everybody has to ask themselves that question. What do I believe about Black people and where did I get it from?
Oh, Tammy, I don't know if I doubt you're able to keep up with this chat. It is powerful. You are bringing so much amazingness and a different perspective, a different voice to this conversation, right? We've all heard sprinkles of this, but to hear it the way you were putting it, for me, my mind is like, oh, I'm having so many aha moments in my head. I can't keep it together. So thank you for bringing it, as you always do. I think I saw Sean's hand up earlier.
Yes, thank you again for allowing me to speak. It's so, I want to watch this recording maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm so glad you're recording it. So when you work with dogs, and I don't liken dogs to people, I just want to make a point. When you work with dogs, you do little things to remind them that you are the leader of the pack. Mm-hmm. When you walk out of the house, you walk out of the house first. When you walk in, you walk in first. You eat before they get a drop of food. You do these little things with your dog, and then they can settle in comfortably behind the pack. They can settle into their place in the pack, and that is in the back, where you want them, where you need them to be. Mm-hmm. This is what racism does for Black people, particularly Black men. They make tiny little impressions on their psyche, on their hearts, on their mind. Every time a woman grabs her purse a little closer to them, every time a family walks on the other side of the street, every time a woman gets out of the elevator because she sees you're about to come in. Now, nothing happened. Nothing bad happened, but it did. Because now that impression is a little bit deeper, that you are untrustworthy, you are not wanted, you are foul. And there's two sides of that. That's the receiving end. White folks are conditioned to do it.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. They're so conditioned to. I literally had the same discussion with a girlfriend of mine. She's, I call her my live, laugh, love white girl. Because she that's how white she is, honey. She is live, laugh, and love. And we were having a conversation, and I said to her, I said, why are you afraid of Black men? What evidence you have of being afraid of them? And she goes, I don't know. She goes, I just get nervous. I said, this is how white supremacy and conditioning and programming goes, okay? She has no evidence of ever being harmed by a Black man, being assaulted by a Black man, being hurt by a Black man, but she has an inherent fear of Black men. I said, now let's talk about who in your life has hurt you emotionally, physically, and sexually. She said, white men. I said, you see how programming and conditioning works? You have evidence of the kind of man who will hurt you, rape you, beat you, and you have no fear. You will walk into a room with all white men, the men who you have actual evidence of that's been harmful to you, and have no fear. And you'll walk into a room with no evidence of ever being, and I'm talking about personal evidence. You don't have no evidence in your personal life of ever being harmed by a Black man, being accosted, assaulted, but the fear for Black men is sitting in you. So when I say, if you come out of America as a white person racist, it's a freaking miracle. It's a miracle, because the conditioning is to have you to see Black people as others, as violent, as not as trustworthy, all these things, even though all the evidence you have for all those things being true are from the people who look like you. I say this all the time. I walk into Starbucks, and I'm one of these people. I get nervous when I walk into spaces with young white males. And the reason why I get nervous, because I have evidence to be nervous. If a movie theater is going to get shot up, it ain't going to be from my kid. It ain't going to be from the kid that looks like me, right? If somebody's going to walk into a grocery store or Starbucks and pull out a gun, it ain't going to look like me. So when I walk into spaces and it's the young white men, I am alert. I sit on alert. I'm paying attention. I make sure I'm by a near door. And I do this because I have evidence of it. I'll watch white people. Now, we all have the same evidence because we all live in the same country. So you're not seeing anything more than I'm seeing. We're both seeing what's on the news. We know who's shooting up schools. We know who's shooting up movie theaters. We know who's shooting up grocery stores. Now, this is not I'm not making a racial statement. I'm talking about the evidence we have currently in the country. The people who do this look like young white men, but white women and other white men will walk in spaces with these young white men. They ain't looking at the door. They're not paying attention. They're so relaxed and they feel safe. And I'm thinking, how could you feel safe? We have evidence why we should be paying attention to who's coming in and out of this building. And I'll sit in buildings, high alert, making sure I'm by a door, paying attention to everybody's movement. And white people are just, honey, they're talking and they're doing all kinds of things. And I go, the conditioning around anti-Blackness is such that the people that we should be paying attention to will have you not paying attention to them. Will have you not paying attention to them. And this is how you end up in spaces where the shooting that happened in Vegas, where the guy was in the top just shooting and killing. This is how y'all end up in places where y'all end up dead, because y'all are conditioned not to see each other as a threat. You're conditioned to see me as the threat, to see Black people as the threat, and not to see each other as the threat. And it always blows my mind. Every time I go somewhere, I'm paying attention to who's in the room with me. I'm always paying attention to who's in the room with me, especially if I'm in a majority white space with white men. And I watch white women walk in, put down their bags, and pay no attention to their surroundings. And why are they not paying attention to their surroundings? Because they're in whiteness. They're around white people. So they automatically assume safety in the way that you wouldn't assume safety in the presence of Black people. If you walked into a room with Black people, you don't assume safety. You only assume safety in the presence of whiteness.
Well, that's a mic drop. Sheesh.
Exactly, 1,001%. I think we should have booked an hour and a half for this conversation. We are already at the top of the hour, just about. Oh my gosh, so many nuggets. I highly recommend everyone not only save the chat, but go back and listen to this recording again. Tiffany, I'll send them out we'll send the link out in our thank you emails. There is a part 2. And if you haven't seen her first one that she did with us, a year, we were fresh into this work. I can't even remember. Go watch it. This woman is power, and she brings it, and she's authentic. Tiffany, I'm sending it over to you.
Thanks. I don't, yeah. Yeah, we'll send all this out in the thank yous, because yes, different topic, but Tammy, all of you who know her and who just got to experience all that she brings in her authenticity and her just fire and grace. You got to see that other one too, because it's just amazing. We are so grateful for you all joining, spending this hour with us. I don't even know where it went, but we're wishing you a wonderful week. The chat is still rolling. I think we'll be catching up afterwards, but we will make sure that you get this recording to watch again, and please join anytime you're able. And we really appreciate it. So have a good weekend. I know this is like thick stuff, but it's stuff that we all need to sit with, and we're sitting in community right now, and you just can't get better than that. So thank you, Tammy, for your nuggets of wisdom. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody being here. I hope I haven't offended anybody. I hope.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you.
Bye,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.